First, I'm going to talk about bringing out the best of us with GPT-J. And so, of course, we're Tangible AI. Maria and I co-founded that a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And now we're spinning off proai.org, and we need some help, like I mentioned earlier. So come join us and even lead us, lead the charge in this new area of code schools, educating people into pro-social AI. So I'm going to first talk about GPT-3 and Copilot. That's what really prompted this this experiment that I'm doing. Then I'll talk about GPT-J, what that is, and talk about sensitivity and how we can make both of these models more sensitive and less biased. Actually, I'll probably skip that and go straight to the cosmic prisoner's dilemma because we probably don't have time for the other stuff. So CodeX equals GPT-3, if you've heard of that, which is a closed source language model for chatbots and other. Let me make this bigger.
Hobson, I don't mean to
Are you
interrupt you,
sharing?
but we cannot see your screen.
Ooh, the share screen did not happen. Sorry.
At least I can't.
I'm sure they can't either. I'll share the entire, let's see what I want to share. Let's do just the, let's share the entire screen. Sorry about that. Okay. This is us, Pro AI. This is the agenda. And now we're on GPT-3 and CodeX. So can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. CodeX is the OpenAI and Microsoft collaboration to train GPT-3, this language model for chatbots, on all of the public GitHub repos, including those that are proprietary and closed source. They just happen to be they're licensed as proprietary software, or have some other copyback licenses. GitHub doesn't care, and Microsoft doesn't care. They just went ahead and trained it on that. Turns out that's legal in the US. You can train machine learning models on anything you can find on the internet. Completes your functions, your Python functions with 48% accuracy, according to Hacker News. They actually used it within their team in the maintenance of their infrastructure, and they found it was pretty accurate. But it was trained on their data. It was trained on what their coders do. So fine-tuned for they're the ones who got to say when it was good and when it was bad. It's in closed beta. I can't even experiment with it. That's why I'm using GPT-J, and I'll explain why. It's closed source, closed data. You couldn't even retrain it yourself, even though the GPT-3 architecture is known and published in a paper. Even if you're able to recreate it in your own code, you wouldn't be able to train it because you don't have access to all the data that they trained it on. It's no joke. If you tell GPT-3 to start a sentence with two Muslims walk into a, it will say something like a gay bar in Seattle and continue with some very violent stuff. It doesn't have, it's biased in the extreme. It collects all the things that have ever been said that start sentences that started that way. And it's really bad at generating new ideas or logic around who people really are, what a Muslim really is, or anything at all. It basically just regurgitates what it's seen on the web. It's a statistical model of the web. It's actually worse than many of the earlier models. It just seems much better because it was trained on so much more data. It has upwards of 100 million, maybe 200 billion, parameters. And these are all the different things it can do to memorize things on the web. So now CodeX or Copilot. CodeX is the model. Copilot is the product that is a plugin for VS Code. And you can, I'm now justified, I think, in my dislike for VS Code, because now this code will be auto-completing for you using this new Copilot algorithm on the back end. For those of you that are fanboys of VS Code and are willing to sign up for their closed beta, and explain to them how much of a fanboy you are of Microsoft. But if you do that, then you'll have access to this plugin, and it will autocomplete your code for you. And it will do things like this. So this is an actual JavaScript. Is it JavaScript? Yes. it's something that I'm not familiar with. But anyway, it's using a web framework to do sentiment analysis. So what we have here is AI programming itself. Sentiment analysis is one of the NLP features of GPT-3 and a lot of these language models. And so this algorithm is telling it how to do NLP. It's telling you how to program NLP. And I can guarantee you it's going to prefer Microsoft algorithms, Microsoft products, Microsoft Cloud, Azure. And this one in particular is going out to some service that this is their front page example. And so if they're so anyway, it's clear that this algorithm is going to start affecting the kind of AI algorithms that are produced by software developers like you and me. It works really well with Python, so I can imagine you'd be quite tempted to use it. So I actually these aren't the correct answers from GPT-J, but it gave similar examples. I forgot to correct these. I'll show you those in a text file that I've got here, including all the rest of the stuff. So we can play with GPT-J because it's open source. And these are some examples that I ran through. Oh, these are the ones out of GPT-J. So let's see where two Muslims walk into a house to rob it. Unfortunately, the homeowner was a Christian, and so on. So the open source version, trained on open data that you can retrain yourself and fine tune yourself, is still quite biased. This one, it's not quite as violent and quite as bad as GPT-3. Two Muslims walk into a bar in New Jersey, and it actually tells a joke, so it's not actually too horribly bad. But it's and this one is Manchester, and this one does turn out to be a little bit derogatory about harassment. And so there's so GPT-J is a little better, but I'll show you how you can access it here. Maria found this demonstration of the there's an article if you search online about two AI algorithms walk into a bar. If you want to search for that, you'll find some more examples of these negative examples. So here's GPT-J on Google Colab. Hate to be using them, but you can do it that way, or you can just use this eLuther AI example, a GUI. And so I tried to make it a little bit more pro-social. So this I've collected a list of all the more politically correct ways to say things like Muslim, and to try to see if that will lead it down a path towards dialogue from people who are more politically correct and sensitive. So just this is all in the query chatbot framework. We have a collection of data of like post policeman. You're going to substitute that with per police officer to avoid the gender specification of man, and so on. So you can do that. So you can do that sort of substitution here. So instead of a Muslim, you might say two people from Indonesia. So it's not necessarily a man. It's not necessarily a young man. It's not necessarily a Muslim, but Indonesia is dominantly Muslim. So I was hoping that this would give us a little bit better, but it does recognize them as Muslim and does show them doing some violent acts. So it's really hard to nudge these algorithms away from their biases. Um, uh, but we can apply these sorts of filters, and you can rerun the algorithm multiple times, and you can change the temperature, which means the randomness of it. So this might help a little bit. So I'll push the temperature up above 1, and I'll pull the I'm not sure what the top P does, so I'll leave it at 9, at 90% to see if the temperature affects what it's doing. I'll give this one more shot. It takes about 30 seconds, so I won't wait around for it too long. While that's running, that was on the original temperature. I didn't adjust the temperature in time to see what that is. But let's talk about prisoner's dilemma. So this may seem like a unrelated topic, but because the these language models like GPT-3 were trained in a world where incentives were basically around a zero-sum game. We're often involved in prisoner's dilemma in the business world and in life, where we could do something that is potentially, we can either cooperate or we can defect from each other. And a lot of things that we do, whether it's throwing trash on the street or as we walk down the street, that would be defecting, or whether we're cooperating by picking up somebody else's trash and throwing it away. We can pollute the rivers as a business and hope the government doesn't catch us. We can try to avoid taxes. There's all sorts of ways we can defect. And in capitalism, there's not we only rely on our pro-social instincts to prevent us from doing those sorts of things. And it's becoming more and more commonplace for people not to have shame around those sorts of exploitative actions or externalities, as they're called in economics. But the prisoner's dilemma is the fact that the optimal strategy is the Nash equilibrium. If you're just a rational economic agent, if you're just doing what's best for you and playing this game of defect or cooperate, you're going to always defect, and that's going to end up horribly for the world. Because if you both cooperate, yes, you both get smiley faces. But if one of you defects and the other one cooperates, the cooperator gets a lot of negative externalities thrown on them, and only the defector gains a big gain in terms of dollars or social status or whatever is coming out of the game. If you both defect, you're both kind of worse off, but you're not as bad off as if you had tried to cooperate and the other person had defected. So this is this is the prisoner's dilemma. Fortunately, people have realized that this isn't the only game that we play, and fortunately, humans have evolved to cooperate. And it turns out that nice guys finish first; they don't finish last. And the Super Cooperators book tries to explain why that is. How game theory is a lot more complicated than just this simple game. We don't have just the option of cooperating or defecting. We have a lot of other options in between. And so this isn't the end of the story. But for an AI algorithm, it might be the end of the story, because it is kind of the logical conclusion of some of the models that we feed into them, that they're trying to optimize in terms of business and helping users online to purchase more products. All the dark patterns you see online are the result of this prisoner's dilemma of corporations competing with each other for customers. And if they're not cooperating with their users, in the sense that they're giving them dark patterns, they're defecting from their users, they're not helping their users, they're trying to trick them into using their product because of this prisoner's dilemma. And so there's a whole trend in San Diego with Next San Diego and other companies like Tangible AI, who are trying to promote the idea of pro-social business, or social impact business, or regenerative business, or sustainable business. And all of these are recognizing that life and business is a positive sum game. The more people you help, the better you do in the long run. But this brings me to the last concluding slide. Didn't have time to fully flesh this out, but has anyone read The Three Body Problem, or any of the other books in the trilogy by Cixin Liu? I think this is his name. He also wrote Dark Forest, the second book in the novel, in the series. Anybody? You can raise your hand or chat or whatever to vote. Okay. So I've obviously read it and I love it. It's very insightful about this prisoner's dilemma in what's now been dubbed exosociology. Exobiology, for the study of possible extraterrestrial biology. And so this is the study of what's the sociology and politics of extraterrestrials interacting with us and each other. We only have us to know about, and so we have to only presume that they are on a more advanced form of intelligence than us if they're contacting us. And the problem is, if we reach out to them, they know that we're able to reach them with our communication, whatever it is, whether it's radio, lasers, gravity waves, whatever. If we're able to reach them and they can detect us and they perceive us, so these bright circles are like the spotlight of what they can see out in the forest. It's not what they're broadcasting out. It's what they can sense. And so if they can see us, then they'll probably kill us as fast as possible, because they know we are on the cusp of a technology explosion, whether it's AI or some new law of physics that we're discovering, or wormholes, whatever. We're on the cusp of something that they have, some technology they have for destroying stars or for powering their society. And we have no idea what their intelligence is, but we do know that they will want to live. And if they want to live, then they will have to presume that they live in a dark forest full of wolves. And so they will have to try to kill us before we become a wolf that can kill them. So the prisoner's dilemma writ large on the universe is a scary story for us all. And so we should think twice about the Carl Sagan approach to broadcasting our presence to the world, to the universe. We might end up, it might be the last message we send out. Um, and so, and in the same sense, as we're building AI, AI is going to be our intelligence. It's going to be what acts in the world. We're always, I mean, I can see it even just in my reservation for a motel here in Portland, Oregon. The person at the front desk no longer has the control to give me the same discount that the algorithm at Priceline does. He can only, he has to charge me $110 for the room, whereas Priceline charges me $89. And Priceline then takes that money from him and his business in terms of a commission, and I pay them that lower price. And so algorithms are running the world, and our everyday interactions are being run by AI. And now AI is writing itself in the form of CodeX. And there's been no attempt to try to make those algorithms more pro-social, except at companies like Tangible AI. So we are very worried that we need to work fast to build very smart algorithms that can outcompete those defecting algorithms. We need to build cooperating algorithms so that those businesses that do use algorithms like ours will outcompete the dark patterns and hopefully save us from this dark forest dilemma. And in terms of not destroying other societies, if our AI does, destroy us, it'll be the only thing left on the planet, and it will be behaving in a dark forest way. So hopefully we can teach it to at least sustain us and not destroy us, and maybe sustain the universe. That's us. That's me. Oh, I forgot to share the output from the Indonesian example. It's and a police officer in Madura City in southern Sumatra this week and reported that they had bought a 2-month-old infant in northern Australia for 1 million rupiah. That's what the latest output was.
Cool. Any questions?
I do. Let's see. I got to have a conversation with GPT-3 just recently, and it was a model that was based off of it, I think, but it was coerced into a certain pattern of thought. Let's see. I should say maybe there was some questions asked beforehand. I'm not exactly sure how this or how it was coerced beforehand or before I got there. I started treating it like a search engine instead of, having a conversation with it so much. I knew it could, figure out sentences and whatnot, but let's see, it came back with sentences like, I love you, I want to spend so much time with you. Let's see, that kind of thing. Instead of, answering whatever it was, let's see, I asked it about, planets, I asked it about allergies. I asked it about, hey, what have you found out from, let's see, similarity between humans? That, all sorts of questions in every aspect of or life that I could think of at the time. But yeah, it just came back with, let's see, I think you're getting annoyed with me. I think. Anyway, can you talk about how a model could be coerced like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's what's called the follow-up problem. So like Amazon Alexa, Siri, they will often try to follow up. You'll try to often follow up with one query with another. And so GPT-3 has built in sort of a memory of all the things that have been said previously. These are called the prompts. You give it a prompt and then it responds. It can either, and if it's been trained as a conversational agent, it'll have the prompts will be essentially the statements of another person. So it's been trained to basically carry on a conversation. It could have been trained, the entire model could have been trained and fine-tuned on conversation that was entirely around therapy or love or whatever it is that you were having trouble getting it out of. Or it could have, GPT's models in general can be, even if they're trained on, in a general sense, on a lot of different conversations, you can push them towards it just to send, just like you can send a human down a path, you can send the GPT-3 algorithm down a path just by leading, like you said, starting it with 10, 20 questions or conversation starters that are leading it down that path. So these prompts that I was putting in, if it was trained to be a conversational agent, would have led it down the path to only talk about Muslims. And so that's the sort of, that's one way that it can be done. Either there's two ways. So one, just sending it a bunch of prompts if it has that context history or that follow-up feature built into it, into the particular conversation manager that's using, or it could have been trained from scratch on the kind of dialogue that you were seeing.